Welcome to my channel. My name is Christopher D. Abbott. If you like my content, please hit the subscribe button, wherever it is, somewhere. And you are watching the Abbott News. In today's video, we're going to talk about a fabulous series of books called The Songs of the Osirian, written by me. So I want to tell you a little bit about them and give you some brief history, backgrounds, and so on, and some of the fabulous people that I have had involved in those stories, and a little bit about the series in general and where it's going to go to. So stay tuned, and I'll show you a few pictures, and then we'll talk about books. Songs of the Osirian is a series of stories based on the idea that the world has a cataclysmic event, an apocalyptic end, if you like, where groups of people are spread so that mankind is reduced in numbers by a massive amount, and we find areas of the world populated but disconnected from the rest of the world. In 2016, I was asked to write a short story for an anthology for a company called Media Bitch Literary Agency, and they wanted me to come up with an idea centered around an animal, which I had never done before. So I thought long and hard about what that could mean, and whether or not my animal was a talking animal, or whether or not it was humans interacting with an animal, and so on and so forth. And then I thought to myself, well, there was no other criteria than that, so I could give it a bit of a sort of a sci-fi fantasy twist, and that's where the idea was born from. And of course they sent me a copy of the cover, which was their design at the time, and that cover inspired the idea that, oh, I know, I'll have a big lion and I'll call it Beast, because the story was called Beasts, and that was where that came from. But as I developed that story, I began to realize that there was much more to be told in it. And I think probably because I hadn't written anything like this before, certainly nothing fantasy based. I mean, at that time I had only written murder mystery stories, and they were set in the 1920s, and there was no correlation between these two sets of writing. I thought, well, how am I going to achieve this world-ending kind of apocalyptic type event, and where is that story going to take me and the reader? And what am I looking at here? Am I looking at a humanistic point of view, or am I looking at it from a fantasy point of view, or a science fiction point of view, and so on? And so that's where Songs of the Osirian developed. Knowing that I am now going to turn this short story into a much larger story, I had to decide how big it was going to actually be. Was it going to be a very simple beginning, middle, and end, which every story needs to have, or every book needs to have as well? But when a series happens, you have a beginning, middle, and end of a book, but you also have a beginning, middle, and end of a series, and you have to decide where that middle is and where that end is. And the way I've always written is certainly with the murder mystery stuff, and it's a little different for the fantasy, but the way I have done it is I write the beginning, I write to around about the middle of the book, and then I write the end, and then I bridge, so that I can have a real concept of where I'm going to, where I'm heading to, and that so that the book itself has an actual beginning, middle, and end, or it feels that way to the reader. And certainly, from my perspective, that's how it works. And that's fine for a book, but how do you do that for a series? I mean, you can't just sort of jump to the end of the series and write the end. Well, yeah, that's what I did. So I have actually written the end of this series already, because I figured, well, why not? That process works fine for my story writing in my book format. The series is no different, it's just much longer, but at the end of the day, I've written now to the middle of the series, so I'll shoot off, write the ending, and now I know between the middle book and the end book where I need to bridge. So that's how I developed it. But I had to have this running theme throughout the entire series, and that theme is, fantasy, science fiction, ancient Egyptian mythology, the predominant theme, and music. These were the four elements of the entire conceptual idea of the story. And there you have it. Songs of Beast transitions into Songs of the Osirian and becomes a much larger story based on my original concepts. I'd like to thank a few people. Richard Sutton, my cover artist, who has done an amazing job of making me stand out in the crowd. My editor, Patty Giese, for all of her work in not just making me sound good, but helping me to develop my own appreciation and understanding of English. My wonderful friend Chase Masterson, who wrote the foreword for my first book and has been instrumental in getting me integrated within the Star Trek community, and I love her immensely. And my Jan Friedman, my friend and mentor, who has been instrumental in assisting me to get this out there and to develop myself as a writer. I'm very thankful to him. Oh look, there he is there. Oh no, that's JP Hudson. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did make it all the way through to the end, I appreciate it. And please, please, please hit the subscribe button for me. That would be awesome. And if you want any future content or if you have any questions for me, just pop them in the comments. I would appreciate that. Love you all. And you've watched the Abbott News.